Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Draft. I'm sitting here with my co-host and friend, Frankie Abbott. Today, we're going to have a really fun episode for you guys. We're going to be talking about the defensive side of the ball, what their end of the year roster looks like, and then some guys that we think maybe could be leaving next year, some guys that we want to retain for next year, free agents. But Frankie, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Season's finally over. Don't have to endure any more super sad, awful Broncos games. Can get my hopes up for the next season where they're definitely going to make the playoffs. And I definitely think they're going to win the Super Bowl and nothing can go wrong yet because the season's super far away and I haven't been proved otherwise. I get weeks of non-Russell Wilson memes. Hopefully he doesn't put out any super cringy commercials. And, time is all right. The national championship game for college football is kind of honestly how I think a lot of people expected it to go, but still pretty boring. If we're being completely honest, it was just an absolute ass whipping from Georgia. And life's been pretty good.
There you go. Can't complain, man. I mean, that national championship game was ridiculous. Hey, Cal. Cal says hi in the comments. Paul says hello, Cal. We have a few people in here. Hello, everybody. Paul and Cal so far. But that national championship game was ridiculous, dude. It just felt like one team was so like they were just in different leagues. They were 1,000% in different leagues. TCU had a really good run, but the national championship game really was that Ohio State game. That was the closest we were going to get, I think. And I honestly sit there and look at that Michigan game now, and I'm like, Michigan, how did you lose that? That should have been a game you won.
Yeah, no, Georgia just looked bigger, faster, stronger. Stetson Bennett, finishes off his storybook collegiate career. I think Bowers should have won the MVP, I will say. Bowers had an absolutely insane game, and it's just so fun to watch. Kirby Smart's defense. I mean, there's just something else to say. Like, you guys heard us talking about Quentin Johnston the other week, and like how, we think he could be the possible wide receiver one in this class. He got held to 3 yards. Guys. He had 3 yards. So there's not much else to say about it. This is a guy that could be an elite wide receiver talent in the NFL. 3 yards.
Yes, and Ringo was all over him.
Yeah.
Like, all over him. But yeah, let's get straight into it, Frankie. Like I said, today we're going to be talking about the Broncos' current defensive roster, how it looks next year, and then who could be leaving, who the Broncos could gain. I want to start off with the defensive line. Are you cool with that?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So as it looks right now, the interior defensive line looks like Matt Henningsen, Draymond Jones, Owazarike, Jonathan Harris, Jordan Jackson. I'm not really familiar with Jordan Jackson all that much. DJ Jones, Mike Purcell, and Deshaun Williams. When looking at the free agents there, Draymond Jones and Deshaun Williams are two guys. Frankie, I want your opinion first of what you think of that defensive line, how they performed this year, just like an overview look on what you thought there, that interior group.
With the interior group, I was actually kind of surprised in these last couple weeks. I thought they kind of performed a little bit better than I expected, especially against the Chargers just this last week. It was actually, I believe, on DVOA, like their best run defense performance of the year, which was kind of shocking considering the bodies that were put out there. It's a unit that definitely needs a few bodies. It kind of depends. It really is dependent upon what they end up doing with Draymond Jones. It seems like at this point, we're all kind of waiting for him to get tagged. I don't think a contract's coming anytime soon. Last we heard was, I don't believe those talks were taking place. He had the comment where he was like, I'm here for right now. Who knows what the future is going to happen. I think we also kind of saw he started off the year hot. He was one of the best interior defensive linemen rushing. He continued to be that throughout the year, but I think I don't know whether it was injuries started to kind of get him, as it seemed like every week he would kind of get like a random, like there were like hand injuries that were getting him. There was shoulder stuff that was happening throughout the games that would kind of somewhat hamper him, but we did kind of see him slow down throughout the year. So I do kind of wonder like how interested they are in spending the tag money on him. But outside of him, I think Deshaun Williams is a guy that you definitely want to look to keep around. I think he ended the year with 4.5 sacks, I believe. But outside of that, was just a productive player in the run game and the pass game all year long. And I think it's a unit that could use improving upon. Like, it could use an extra body, but I don't think it's like a glaring hole on the team by any means. I think it's something that if, they throw a veteran at in free agency and keep Draymond Jones, I think it's a totally respectable unit. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, so first, the Broncos struck gold, I think, this offseason with DJ Jones. I think DJ Jones is a beast. He's a tank. He's the exact type of defensive lineman that when I was in high school, I always struggled with. The shorter guys, really stocky, can get under your pads so easy. That's how those guys are able to do it, like a DJ Jones. And so he's a bright spot for sure. I think Draymond Jones is also a bright spot. Now, you bring up an interesting point. Do the Broncos want to spend that tag money on him? That's something we all really have to ask. And there's two trains of thought I have here. Is he going to be worth that tag money? I think it's kind of up in the air. Like, he could make another jump where it's like, yeah, he is. But if he were to play at the level that we saw him this last year, he's probably somewhere around it, but not there, is the way I would do it. Think of it, but I just wonder, sometimes you do have to bite the bullet there. You do. Because what do the Broncos go if you get rid of Draymond Jones? What does that defensive line look like without Draymond Jones next year? I mean, I like Matt Henningsen. I like Awazarike. I like some of these guys, Deshaun Williams. Do I want them starting, though? Or would I rather have them in a rotation? And do I want to win next year? Like, if I'm trying to go full rebuild, I understand the reasoning there. But I don't think that's the way the Broncos are going to go. I think that they're going to end up keeping Russell Wilson, and they're going to try to win in some capacity. So I'm curious what the thought process is going to be there for sure. If it were up to me, I would keep Draymond Jones around. That's just me personally.
Yeah. I will say, one more thing, like, while I think we're hearing how, Draymond was a core player was something George Payton said, also said this about Bradley Chubb a few days before he traded him. George Payton does not have, I don't want to say he doesn't have loyalty because, there's no loyalty in the NFL. It's business, whatever. The guys that George Payton didn't draft that were part of the previous regime have been left out to dry for the most part. He is not very interested in kind of keeping a lot of those guys around. And I know it kind of seems like Peyton really isn't in charge of the 53 anymore. I don't think he'll be in charge. He clearly caught that demotion, but like he does clearly still have some say that I don't think it's a sure thing that Draymond Jones is kept around because, like I said, I think he's shown such a willingness to not hold on to those guys that he didn't draft, that he didn't bring in himself. He just clearly, I think he would much rather have the assets himself to go sign a guy in free agency, to go draft a player if it's a tag and trade for a Draymond. And, I think especially when it comes to the sense of, we were talking about this the other week, we could see a couple moves this year that George Payton's making out of his own self-interest. I think we all know he's on a little bit of a hot seat right now. I think, keeping Draymond Jones is one thing, but, possibly having the money to go get a player that people can look at it as a difference maker that could save your job. George Payton might be looking at it from that little bit of an angle as well. Just a little side thought.
No, I think that's all valid points there. It definitely is. Like, Draymond Jones was not brought here by George Payton, right? There's not that attachment. There's not that I need to make this guy worth that. I do want him in there, but like, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't happen. So that's kind of what our thoughts are there. I thought you said it was like solid was the word you used, I think, on your season overview of that position.
Probably like a C+, yeah.
C+. I'm probably around there. I do also think they could use another body, though, even if they do bring back Draymond Jones. If they lose Draymond Jones, they need to bring back a lot more. They needed like a substantial piece there. Otherwise, I think you're banking up a lot of question marks. But I'm probably right there with you, Frankie. It's probably a C+ for me. But let's move on to the next position here. Let's go to the edge group. Let's start up front and we'll work our way all the way to the back end of the defense. We have Nick Bonito. Now, this is an interesting name, Christopher Allen. Some people really like Christopher Allen. He'll be back next year. Baron Browning, Jonathan Cooper, Randy Gregory, Jonathan Kongbo, Jacob Martin. What do you think of those guys?
They need a body in this room. I was probably the loudest of the don't trade Bradley Chubb people, even though, I completely understand the compensation, guys. I get having a first round pick is wonderful. First round picks. everybody loves, having first round picks. It's super fun doing mock drafts. Where Let's Talk Draft, we love having it. It's super fun. This room does not have like a solidified 3-down edge that you can say you're confident in. I love watching Baron Browning jump snaps. I love watching him do freakish athletic things. Baron Browning is not ready to be a 3-down player on the edge right now. Maybe he puts on a ton of muscle in the offseason. Maybe he really develops in the run game. We haven't seen it yet, so I think it's unfair to kind of put that on him. Randy Gregory, I'll say it every week. Me and Joey absolutely loved Randy Gregory, the player. We think he's one of the most freakish talents in the entire NFL. I think he's just an absurdly unblockable figure. We have not seen him show that he can be healthy for even, I don't even like half the season, I don't think he's a player you can rely on to play double-digit games. And outside of him, I think Nick Bonito has been a disappointment. I wasn't a big Bonito guy coming out of the draft. He's very limited in the usage that he can have. I mean, he's a pass rush specialist, and we've kind of seen he's not really offering too much in that regard this year. And then you've got guys like Jake Martin, who I think is probably a cut candidate at the beginning of next season. You mentioned a couple other guys like Kongbo. Cooper's a guy who's a fine special teams player, and, he can do fine things off the edge as a rotational piece, but like he's not a guy you want starting, and he's already had to start too many games in his Denver career. They need bodies. They might need multiple bodies. And, it's one of those things where they traded this for this first round pick. And I was super kind of like, at first in my mind, I was like, oh, I swear if they end up using this first round pick that they traded away Bradley Chubb, a solidified good edge player, and, draft, the cheap Bradley Chubb replacement, I'll be frustrated. I think that might honestly be one of their better routes at this point. I think it's kind of the way, if there was a position you can say that there will likely be a very talented physical specimen towards the end of the first round, edge is usually that position. Usually enough of them end up going in the first round. The NFL has gotten pretty good at kind of analyzing them and finding which ones end up kind of working out. And it's crazy to say, but I think edge is a position that they should strongly consider in the draft. And I think they have to consider in free agency too, because they just aren't strong enough on the outside of their defense.
Yeah, it's definitely a position they need to look at, the edge position as a whole. Like, the issue isn't talent in the room, I don't think. Because when you sit there and think about investment, the Broncos just gave Randy Gregory a big contract this offseason. They just drafted Nick Bonito in the second round. And then they went and took what I thought was their best inside linebacker and moved him to edge. So it's not an investment issue, right? It's I don't really know what I'm getting from issue right now, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know what I'm getting from these guys. I think Randy Gregory is supremely talented. If he were able to stay on the field the entire season, we're looking at this position a completely different way. But the issue is, if you go through his past, he has a ton of injury issues. Nick Bonito, I still have hope for him as a pass rush specialist, but the issue is that I think that's kind of where he maxes out. I don't know if he can ever be anything more than a pass rush specialist. Looking at his frame and the way he's built and everything like that, his play style, putting on a bunch of extra weight to where he could really stand up offensive tackles and make a big difference in the run game. And, he can shoot gaps and do some stuff like that at his size. But if he really wants to be an edge setting end or edge, I think that he would have to change his physical profile, and that would take away from what he's good at or what he should be developing, which is
100%
being a pass rusher. So that's a little bit of a concern because, like you said, even the pass rush wasn't all the way there. We saw flashes of it on occasion, but it was like far in between. Like there wasn't just a ton. Mm-hmm. And then, I don't know. Baron Browning is a guy I have a lot of hope for. Was he a great 3-down edge this season? No. I do have to say, though, I'm excited for this guy to finally be able to be in a position, like one position for an off season, and then be able to like pick it back up the next.
Yeah.
Even going all the way back to his Ohio State days, man, he was a tough study because they moved him around everywhere. You could never get a good feel, and you felt like, or for me, I felt like it impacted his game. Comes in the NFL, looks good at inside linebacker, next offseason moves again. So maybe after some more reps, and maybe I am just holding out a little cope here, but I do think that he might be able to develop into that one day.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have confidence that Baron Browning can be a fine player. It just bums me out that I think he was in we had such a perfect situation, I think, for our edge room, whatever Bradley Chubb contract aside, however much, they should have paid him, whatever they were able to pay him, supposedly it was nothing, even though, they believe me, it was not nothing. They could have paid him fine. I think that Baron Browning was in such a perfect opportunity where he could be rotated in this role where he only had to really worry about the pass rushing. I think Bradley Chubb was such an underrated mentor to the edge room as well. I think, we heard Baron Browning talk so much about how much Bradley Chubb taught him at that position. And I think we saw such a direct drop off as soon as Bradley was gone because they didn't have the ability to work together. One thing I remember mentioning this at the beginning of the year, one of the best things that not one of the best things, but one of the best rushes Evero had, one of the best stunts was having a Chubb line up inside and then having Browning line up outside of him, and then they would twist, that was one of the best things that we saw Browning generate probably 8+ pressures on early on in the year.
Right.
Those things were gone now. And I do kind of worry that I think the path for him becoming a successful edge rusher in the NFL was just so much cleaner having that guy in front of him to kind of show him the ropes that I think it is a lot harder on him this year,
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. I totally get what you're saying. So if you could go back in time, would you make that Bradley Chubb trade? I know you weren't a very big proponent of it at the time. But what are your thoughts on it now that we're kind of looking at it in the rear view?
I go both ways on it. I think it kind of depends upon the contract you can kind of get, but you probably make that trade if you can get a first round pick, as much as it pains me. But I don't know, man. I think it's such a long game, and I think so many people we see this with the Russ trade. So many people are so quick to determine winners and losers of trades. You're not going to know for a couple of years. The Russ trade looks like looks like a loss right now, but unless the Seahawks really turn these picks into something and Russ stays absolute garbage, no one's really been a winner there yet. The Chubb trade, Denver we as fans can feel really good about having a first round pick. But the fact of the matter is the Dolphins are much closer to a Super Bowl right now and probably for the next few years. And Chubb only added to that than Denver is. You can't say that Denver fans wouldn't trade with Dolphins fans, I think. And I think, you're not going to say one trade is going to necessarily do that. But I do think that there's something to be said about respectability and kind of showing your players and showing gratitude and kind of showing loyalty about players that have recovered from injuries, players that do well, players that are locker room leaders. And I think, it's easy to kind of look at the numbers and the business side of it and say, well, Denver lost, this edge rusher and, they got to save this much money and they gained this draft pick. But I don't know, man. I think that it hurt the team a lot more than, anyone will ever admit or everyone will ever really know. And, I don't know. I would have done whatever I could to keep him, honestly. I think they would have been fine on money no matter what.
Okay, interesting. I want to give a quick shout out to people in the chat here. Boggins has entered the chat. We have Zach Seegers. We have Zach Seegers in the comments, and he says, to your point, Frankie, Matt Henningsen talked about how Chubb got him a present for his first career sack and that they've remained in touch since the trade. Believes he'll be a lifelong mentor. He was the Justin Simmons of the front seven. And that kind of backs up your point there, Frankie. I do have to say, I kind of sit on the other end of it. I would still make the trade. I think it sucks losing really good players, but I also don't think the Broncos are in position to not have a for sale sign on some of these players that are coming up on contract here. I just think you have to be looking at somewhat in the future and how do I benefit myself most for the future. And I think that includes getting younger. I have one follow-up question, and then this is going to take us off the rails, and I'll get us right back on after you answer.
I'm excited.
Okay. So I asked you, if you could go back in time, would you have made that trade for that first round pick using Bradley Chubb? Now I want to ask the question, because this is the hot topic question in Broncos country right now, relating to Sean Payton, right? You have to make a trade for him. Would you have traded Bradley Chubb, because it's going to be a first-round pick going to New Orleans more than likely, plus maybe some more, but would you trade Bradley Chubb for Sean Payton straight up?
Bradley Chubb for Sean Payton, yeah. First-round pick for Sean Payton, yeah, guys. I was telling Joey before the show, I've been going back and forth Like, I want Sean Payton really bad, mainly because, well, this isn't the main reason, but Sean Payton's always been one of my favorite coaches. My godmother's a massive Saints fan, absolutely humongous Saints fan. Drew Brees and Sean Payton were, regular viewing in their household, and I would always go over and be told legendary stories about their performances. So Sean Payton's a guy I want in Denver really bad. I really think that he would be great to innovate the offense. I trust him to put together a pretty good staff. I think he probably I think he might have been doing a better job than Harbaugh, maybe of keeping his fingers on the pulse. So I think he might be able to fill in of that CEO role a little bit better. Mm-hmm. I would 100% trade that first round pick for Sean Payton, guys. I think when you look at it as a multi-year investment, you really got to acknowledge like the likelihood of your first round pick becoming this great player versus I think the likelihood of a coach of Sean Payton's caliber helping your team. I don't think it's close. I think Sean Payton, you're guaranteed 3 years of having a really good coach. I think he would be in it for a little bit of more of a long haul. And yeah, I think you make that move whenever you can. If you can get a really, really good coach in the building, it benefits the entire roster, not just one guy. Would you make the move?
I'll first go to Boggins. Let's pretend we asked this question to Boggins. And he says, in theory, if it gives you a stud head coach for the next decade plus, it's not really a question. I totally agree with this. I've been talking about this with Zach and Bree a ton on the Let's Talk Broncos podcast. I've never ever heard this Sean Payton's overrated stuff up until literally 3 weeks ago. I've never heard it ever in life. Has anyone ever told me that Sean Payton's overrated? And now that stuff's just popping up and popping up and popping up. And I don't know. I get people not wanting to trade a first round pick for a coach because most of the time you just hire a coach and it doesn't cost you any draft picks. And I think that's kind of what people have in their brain. But the thing here, guys, is that the Broncos are getting one of the best offensive minds in the entire NFL. If Sean Payton comes over here, there's no guarantee that any of these guys are even close to Sean Payton. And odds are that they are not. They won't bring you what Sean Payton brought the Saints for, I think it was 15 years. I would definitely trade a first round pick for him. There's not a position or a coach in sport that I can think of that affects the game more than it does football. Yeah. And it's really the second most valuable thing, I think. I think it goes quarterback, head coach. If we're talking about one position, right? Team obviously matters, but I think all those other guys are so dependent upon each other. That one man at head coach can make a dramatic difference. And if he's able to follow his vision out for a football team, it could be awesome. So I definitely think that I would trade that first round pick for Sean Payton.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this kind of goes into with Boggins' point too. I've harped on it so many times, guys. They need stability along the entirety of the coaching staff, along the positional coaches. And I think Sean Payton and Jim Harbaugh give you a great opportunity to not only build a good coaching staff, but give you some guys that might actually be there for a couple of years. I don't think there's going to be a ton of fall guys on that coaching staff. I think Sean Payton's going to be able to find you an offensive line coach that can hopefully right the ship and continuously grow these players. It's not, I know the first round pick sounds all glamorous and stuff, but I'll keep saying it, guys. Draft picks are only as good as the coaches you have to develop them, man. It's just, It's so hard. Every year I think we're going to talk about, oh, look at these great picks Denver had. There's going to be a couple of picks we're going to say that we really like. But what happens then when in year two, they have a second offensive line coach or a second, wow, I just threw Butch Berry under the bus. Maybe they have a second quarterback coach or linebacker coach or defensive back coach who isn't as good. Now it's not linear growth for that guy. Now maybe, the good player we saw at first, he's picking up some bad technique. He has to change his body type and drop 15 pounds. He's doing things that we wouldn't really want this rookie to be doing because he's receiving bad coaching. We need to get the foundation of the building built. We need good coaches to develop these players. Because at the end of the day, if you have good coaches, it really doesn't matter where you're picking guys. It really doesn't. You're going to be able to get guys in the building that fit your scheme, and you're going to have coaches that teach them what to do. And, that's the name of the game. It's not all about having the number one pick so you can get the best college player. The best college player doesn't always become the best NFL player. It's all about being coached and being able to develop.
I totally agree with you, man. And one more time in the comments here, Paul says it's the first plus part that people, it's why the reason why people are on pause. And I get that. Cal is a fan of Ben Johnson, the Lions offensive coordinator. He's done tremendous stuff over there with a not so talented quarterback, right? Or from what we think, in Jared Goff. But I don't want to get too far off the track.
I do have one more question though for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Would you trade the 2024 first round pick for Sean Payton?
That one's tough because I'm looking I'm not completely giving up on Russ, but I am thinking past him. Making a move right here. Like I can't continue to, I don't know. I just can't put all my eggs in that one basket. And that's why I'm so against the Dan Quinn stuff right now. I mean, that's a total now. We're going only looking at the Russell Wilson thing to me. We're going to bring the Seattle boys back. That's what that is. We're not looking past Russell Wilson. It's either do or die with him. And I don't think that's the right decision for the Broncos. And that 20 next year's first is tough because that's the year that you think the Broncos should be looking past Russ if this doesn't work out. It's hard I don't know. I go back and forth about that one. What would you do?
Man, I know it's said every year, but next year's quarterback class looks really damn good. And if Denver has the opportunity to be a top 5, top 10 pick, who knows what ends up happening next season? I've become a little bit more believing that Russ can maybe have the bounce back year and be this guy that we somewhat hoped he could be. But it would be a disservice for the front office to not be looking at all options for quarterback beyond next season. Russell Wilson did not show enough this year that you want to keep him for the super long term. He's only getting older. The injury stuff is genuinely concerning. I think that's a big thing that people don't really touch on. The play this year has been scary. What's been not scary, but what's been probably equally as scary for me is Russ has always been this guy that did not sustain these injuries. And I know he's always been willing to play through injuries, but he really didn't show massive signs of being hurt. These past few years, he's been getting hurt a good amount, guys. Is Russ can we reliably say that Russ can make it through a season? Obviously, this year is a bit of an outlier because of how much he was sacked, but with Russ's style of play, with the way we're kind of seeing the offense kind of needs to be geared around him, maybe getting outside of the pocket and running a little bit more. I hope he's a guy that's able to be healthy, and I'm sure that's something they're monitoring where, I think you can't trade away that 2024 first round pick. I think, I know I'm saying how much I want the coach to be able to build this solid foundation, but man, I think that shows a lack of faith to the player. I don't know, man. That'd be just such a tough sell for me. Such a tough sell. You'd be digging that hole so deep because in theory, that'd be it'd literally be throwing an extra. I don't want to say it's throwing an extra first round pick onto the Russell Wilson trade, but with what that pick could end up being, if it was another top 5 pick, that's just terrible. That's just terrible.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, it kind of depends on where that pick would lie, and you really don't know. If I'm trading another top 5 pick, knowing the quarterbacks that are coming out next year, that's super tough. But obviously we don't know where that pick will lie if Russell Wilson can turn it around, whatever the situation is there. But I don't want to get too off. We were evaluating the Broncos roster at the end of the year, and I want to talk about the inside linebackers after that. So we have Alex Singleton, who's a free agent, Josie Jewell. Justin Stranad's on here. There's a few, just Jonas Griffith. There's a few guys on there. What do you think of the Broncos linebacker core this season, and would you keep Alex Singleton around?
I'd love to keep Alex Singleton. I'm curious what his price tag will be. I know that might not be the most popular thing, but I think we've kind of seen that, I think they can kind of make do at linebacker. I think Josie Jewell kind of takes up enough of the not high paid, but decently paid linebacker spot in the room. And again, Alex Singleton had a really good season. And I do wonder if NFL teams will kind of take note of that and be okay, this guy's worth a little bit. Maybe we see him kind of thrown a little bit of a deal that's got some money to it. So I wouldn't necessarily be rushing to re-sign him, but he does provide a great presence, not only on the defense, but he was a great special teams player for us all season. He had the forced fumble against the Chiefs a couple weeks ago, but I think Singleton's a guy you want to bring back. what is it? Griffith is he's like an ERFA or an RFA. I think they'll be able to get him back for decently cheap. He's a guy I would definitely look to bring back just because of like he's such a physical presence. I think he's a guy you want to keep around for the amount of money he's worth. Josie just continues to be honestly one of the more underrated inside linebackers in the NFL. Like he is so good. I think Denver really struck gold with him. He's probably one of the more less talked about draft picks that has hit in the past few years for Denver because Josie's just awesome. So I think it's a decent room. I think it's kind of another spot where you could see a body added, but if they end up keeping both Griffith and Singleton, I don't think you really need to add a body there. I don't think it's something that they'll be jumping to do necessarily. Mm. What are your thoughts?
I thought the linebacker room was pretty good this year. Alex Singleton impressed me. That's what I will say. Like, I thought that he was going to be really, really terrible watching his prior film. And one thing I want to point out about him, credit Evero massively. Alex Singleton has always been like a run and hit linebacker. That's the way I would describe him to a T, is he's going to run and hit. Everything he does is run and hit. But Evero being able to put him in spots where he succeeds has been just masterful this year. And I think that's also a reason like Alex Singleton looks like a damn good football player. He really does. And Evero has been rushing him a ton. Everything you would want to see from Singleton, Evero is putting him in a position to do so. Josie Jewell is also just a very underrated player by Broncos country. I think recently he's gotten a little more respect because we saw what the Broncos look without him so many times that now it's like people know about him and people enjoy watching Josie Jewell. I like him as well. I don't know. This is the position every single offseason, Frankie, that people swear to God that we need another inside linebacker in the first round. And it kind of drives me insane, and you have to deal with it every single year. But what is your opinion there? What are your thoughts on inside linebacker first round? Is that something the Broncos need?
No, no. Like exactly like you said, it's been this position that like a few years ago they struggled against the tight end like 3 years ago or 4 years ago, but they also are in a division with Travis Kelce and, Darren Waller. But there's this fake notion that they really struggle against tight ends. They're honestly fine, if not above average against tight ends. They were one of the best defenses in the league this year. I didn't see tight ends massacring them on a week-to-week basis. It really wasn't that big of a thing I completely agree. There's a couple prospects that are like really fun at inside linebacker, but like you said, like there are just better spots to throw draft capital towards. I think, if you want to toss some money at a guy in free agency, I hope it's not too much. Because again, like I think there's kind of two sides of the Alex Singleton coin. Alex Singleton's a really good player who they were able to get for cheap this year. And you can either look at that as, wow, Alex Singleton is worth a lot of money. We should look to keep him or we can find cheap linebackers pretty easily, and they can probably play maybe slightly below the standard of Alex Singleton, but they can probably play perfectly adequate for us. Like, I think that's what it is. I don't remember what he cost this year, but I'm pretty sure Singleton was like under $2 million. If Alex Singleton is getting a contract worth like $8 million from a team this year, like $7 per year or something like that, I am completely fine with them saying sayonara. I love you, Alex. I hope you enjoy your multiple $1 million playing for a different team, and throw in a couple $1 million at the next veteran that wants to come through their door. I don't think it's a position that's lacking in the NFL to find aging veterans that'll play for cheap.
Yeah. Okay. I totally agree with your take on the first round pick. I agree with everything you pretty much said there, Frankie. I don't have a ton to add to the linebacker room.
Crushing it. No arguments.
So moving on to the next position, we have cornerbacks. And this year that room looked like, obviously, Pat Surtain, Ronald Darby, K'Wan Williams, Darius Phillips, Jaquan McMillan, Damari Mathis, Lamar Jackson, Faion Hicks. Yeah, that's kind of what our cornerback room looked like. What do you make of the cornerback room this year? And then I'm going to ask you a few questions after that.
Yeah. Patrick Surtain was voted the best corner by his peers. NFL players take a notice. That dude is legit. You can see it on the film every week. Patrick Surtain is a freak of nature. Shouldn't be able to be as big as he is, move like he does, and be as smart and instinctual as he is. Plays the run incredibly. Patrick Surtain is the best corner in the NFL. We are very blessed to have him as Broncos fans. I might argue, and some might argue it would have been better to draft a quarterback. But alas, having the second best option at that pick, I'd say, is not a bad, fallback thing. Outside of him, man, I think they're pretty well set up. I think sometimes people can be, there is the argument that you always need more corners. I think that's totally fine. I think if they want to go get another veteran this offseason, they totally can. But I think the room honestly looks very good. I think that'll happen when you have guys like Christian Parker coaching them up and Ejiro Evero, who used to be a DB coach as well. We just see such consistent growth. And I don't know, we see every year, it seems like a lot of undrafted guys or lower selected guys are able to play at an adequate level. And we saw that from Lamar Jackson. We saw that from Jaquan McMillan this last week that Boggins mentioned in the chat. Sadly, Ronald Darby has been really good in Denver, has been a really good corner throughout his career. And sadly, I don't think he is going to be part of the week 1 roster at the beginning of next season. They save a decent amount of money to cut him. He did have the ACL tear this season. He's, I believe, on the wrong side of 30, or he's about to hit it. So probably better just to kind of save yourself some money there. And again, I mean, we saw that guys like Damari Mathis, like Jaquan McMillan, who I'm not going to, put a star on that he's a solidified player yet, but I think we saw enough athleticism out of him to say, this guy could make a 53. I think they're okay at outside corner. I'm not really too concerned about it. I think a big thing, I think throughout the career of Patrick Surtain, I was telling this to Joey, and this is especially going to be a thing once he gets his massive contract in a couple of years, hopefully from Denver. Please, God, stay. Patrick Surtain, I would be so sad if you leave. I will, oh man, I'll be sad. You're just, I think you're going to live with whatever the CB opposite Patrick Surtain is, I don't think you're ever going to need to have a superstar name. I don't think you need to have a superstar tandem. I think he is such an elite presence and just such a great player that you'll just live with whoever's on the other side. You obviously don't want to have a liability, but you don't need to overspend to try to make this super elite secondary. Having a number 1 corner makes you a good secondary most of the time. You want to have adequate players at the other spots, but I don't think they need to do a super heavy investment. If they were to, the draft is a decent spot this year. There are a lot of guys that kind of fit that kind of hulking outside corner frame that they might be looking at to kind of match up with Patrick Surtain, but I don't think it's a massive need. What about you?
So this year, Pat Surtain, obviously, like you mentioned it, number 1 corner. What else is there to say about Pat Surtain? Everybody in the chat, everybody here knows how good of a football player he is here. I'm right with you and Boggins where I think it's time. Darby started this year playing at such a good level. He was so good. But I do think it's probably time to dump Darby. I am not opposed. I think I'm a little less opposed to you hey, if you want to just load up at that corner position, I'm never going to have an issue with it just because it's a position that I see that you need to be deep at. And if that's, I don't know. I just feel like it is. I mean, I remember years in the past, you could have units where you're just 3 or 4 down at corner and it's an issue. The Broncos are kind of lucky this year with the fact that Damari Mathis stepped in and was even able to play good or okay.
No, you're totally right.
He was not supposed to do that. He really wasn't. The Broncos cornerback room, I remember being really worried about it coming into this. There is a huge luxury of having that number 1 cornerback, and then you can kind of allocate more to help the other guys, right? Because you feel fine with that one guy over there, in our case being Pat Surtain. I just don't feel bad about making a strong point a really strong point. I would not be opposed if we had 2 number 1 corners. I'm sitting here as a happy man. You know what I mean? And I don't think you're saying that you wouldn't be, but I would like to see that. I would like to see that because I think the best Broncos and most talented one we saw was with Ronald Darby on the field.
Yeah.
But continue.
I will say, I think you're totally right. I think that seeing what happens with Christian Parker, definitely swings this for me, I think there's been a lot of hype on what ends up happening with Ejiro Evero. The more reports that come out, I'm thinking it probably ends up happening that he ends up going and coaching another team, which super awesome for him. Shout out E. That guy seems like he's going to be an absolutely phenomenal head coach. hyped to see what he ends up doing. I'm bummed it won't get to be in Denver, probably. Maybe he stays. I hope he stays. But really what ends up happening with Christian Parker, guys, again, like I will just continue to harp on it, guys. Coaching. Like why, Joey was just saying the cornerback room played above his expectations this year. You can point to one man for that, and it's Christian Parker. We were all super scared when Damari Mathis got 4 holdings or 3 holdings in one game, even though I think only like 2 of them were actual holdings. The others were kind of bullshit. But, I think we were all super concerned at that point. Like, fuck, this is our CB tandem at this point. What are we going to do? Christian Parker seemed to coach him up pretty damn well for the rest of the year. I think Damari was one of the bright spots for the rest of the season for the Denver Broncos. And that's such a cool thing that if they're able to retain a DB coach of his caliber, I think you see the benefit of you don't have to invest in that guy. But man, if they end up losing with him, I'm going to very quickly probably lean to the other side of holy crap. This cornerback room is, I'm not going to say not talented because they all show a lot of talent. It's not proven whatsoever. And I wouldn't say that they are very refined outside of Patrick Surtain. This is a room that I think you're going to need to see get efficient coaching, whether it's Damari Mathis, whether it's Isang Bassi, because we don't know if K'Wan Williams will be back next year, whether it is a guy like Jaquan McMillan. These are guys that are going to need a solid DB coach to teach them good technique because we know they're great athletes. Like we know that they're able to physically do the job. We just don't know if we don't know if they got it up there. We don't know if they've had the coaching, and man, that's Christian Parker. Please stay. That is probably the one coach. If I had to pick one coach on Denver's current staff to stick around for next year, I'd probably pick Christian Parker over Ejiro Evero.
High praise.
That's my hot take. That's my hot take right there.
Over Evero?
Yeah, over Evero.
Whoa. Okay.
I think mainly because I think Evero's gone no matter what. But man, if Christian, I would make Christian and this is just completely out of the dark. I know nothing. I'm not in the locker room. Christian Parker seems like a great players coach, but who knows if he actually knows what he's doing as far as like calling a defense. If Christian Parker was a DC option, I'd consider it.
No, I think he will be a DC. He's performing his way into being a DC option in the near future. Christian Parker, he is a bright spot on this Broncos coaching staff that really was a train wreck this last year. Yeah. he's a really bright spot there. Okay, last position, safeties. We have PJ Locke, Justin Simmons, Caden Stearns, DTY, Kareem Jackson. What do you think happens there? Where do you think the biggest need is there? Do you think it's a need?
Well, again, man, it really depends. And I know that's going to sound silly. Kareem Jackson might just be infinite. He might be eternal. He might just never not be on the Broncos roster for as long as I may live. This is, I believe, the 3rd or 4th offseason in a row that I'm like, no chance. Kareem, he's, however old he is. And I absolutely love Kareem. Kareem is sick. Great player. One of my favorite, he's so physical the way he comes downhill for his size. Awesome talent. I love Kareem Jackson. If he wants to keep playing in Denver, awesome. Because I've been of the mindset, man, Kareem, go play for the Eagles or something. Get a ring or something, not trying to bash him at all. And I hope I believe as much as anybody that it could be in Denver. But, man, Kareem, go get you a ring, buddy. You deserve it. You've been a great player in this league for a long time. But I think it's unlikely we see Kareem Jackson on the Denver Broncos next year. But now that I've said it, he'll probably be on the Denver Broncos. Justin Simmons is a guy I think that you can almost pencil in will be here next year, but so I don't want to, start the pitchforks and the torches at all. I would heavily consider trading Justin Simmons probably this offseason, which I know.
Oh, hey, you can find him. I'm just kidding.
You can never. So here's the thing. There will probably never be a higher price for Justin Simmons than there is right now.
No, I agree.
Justin Simmons just created 9 turnovers this season. And again, Justin Simmons is the best safety in the NFL, guys. I don't want to make it sound like I don't value Justin Simmons. I think Justin Simmons is so fucking good.
Yeah.
And I think everyone in the NFL knows that. And if an NFL team was like, hey, we'll give you a 1st-round pick and possibly a couple extra picks for this safety that is getting closer to 30, he's on a pretty big contract for a safety, this is a guy I think that hasn't gotten to do a lot of winning in this locker room. And I think deserves to get to have that chance that, man, if I am very and I said this before Chubb was traded. There was a world where I was considering trading Justin before I was trading Bradley Chubb, just because like I think the age thing plays a big part of it. And man, like it's a safety. Like I'm not trying to bash anybody, but like you just see the dividends gained from having like a super elite safety versus having like one of the better safeties in the NFL. And I think that they could find, valid replacements. It's not something I'm saying should happen, but I'm saying like if it happened and they got like a Jamal Adams type package, which will probably never happen again.
Yeah.
I'd probably be just like, whatever. Set me on fire. Caden Stearns, God, absolutely sucks. And people are going to hate this one too. You can't trust Caden Stearns as the starter. Everyone wants to label Caden Stearns the starter. Guys, Caden Stearns played like 5 games this season.
Keep going, Frankie.
And we don't even know what happened to him, really. Like, we still haven't gotten like clarification of what was wrong with him. I like Caden Stearns a lot, but like, damn, man, this man just missed like 12 weeks and we don't even know why. And this is a guy with like injury concerns coming out of college. Like, I really hope he's okay. I hope he's doing great. But I think it would be irresponsible for the GM of an NFL franchise to be like, that's our starter for 17 games next season. Fat chance, brother. Like, you better go grab another safety. They're not that hard to find usually. And I think we saw last year, you can get a lot of serviceable guys like PJ Locke. I think is a totally fine safety. I think is a guy we all like. I think they got him for a couple $1 million. DTY sucks and is probably going to get cut. Boom. Just kidding. That was mean. DTY seems fine. He could have just gotten a little bit shafted by the coaching staff this year, but he hasn't really seemed to come on at all. We haven't really seen him make many special teams plays. So I think he's probably going to be off the roster at the beginning of next season. And safety room. I got a lot of takes on the safety room.
So
I would take safety in the first round.
Like start from ground up in safety room.
Not like 100%, but I would understand it. And again, I don't think it would be the end of the world. Guys, like a couple of years ago, they invested in the highest paid safety tandem in the NFL, and it was really cool, and it's been really fun for the past couple of years. Has it really paid dividends, as much as we can fault that on the quarterback and the offense? Can we maybe say like, well, damn, maybe we should invest a little bit? If everyone's saying we have to trade Bradley Chubb to fix the offense, then I'm allowed to say, well, maybe we should trade Justin Simmons, considering edge is more valuable than safety, right? Mm-hmm. Boom.
Okay. I get what you're saying, right? Let me I'm going to repeat what you said, and then you just say yes or no, okay?
Yes.
And I'm going to make it as palatable as possible.
Yes.
I'm going to say safety is a position you can go out and find. You can find good safety play. Maybe not great like Justin Simmons, because he's great. That's hard to find, but you can go and find good for cheaper, like for much cheaper, and they're out there. It's not a hard thing to find. So you're saying why not go get those guys that are easier to find? You have at least, like, you can find those guys, right? Good. And really allocate those draft picks you do into positions that are more difficult to find. Is that pretty much what your take is there?
100%. You're nailing it.
Okay.
If a team called the Broncos and offered like a 2023 first and a 2024 first, which again sounds crazy, this is a safety that is playing at an all-pro level that just had 9 turnovers forced this season. He's coming off of like his 4th straight, like 5-pick season. He plays damn near every single snap. Teams are going to value this guy. And I am not saying that I do not value Justin Simmons. I value the shit out of Justin Simmons. I hope every single player on Denver gets the opportunity to play in the playoffs and win a Super Bowl. And I just feel like as much as a painful thing, this is something that we talked about before, who's going to be part of the next great Broncos team? Is Justin Simmons in a couple to a few years going to be playing at a high enough level that we still view him as someone who deserves to be getting this paycheck? Is it better to look towards rebuild? That's it. If you're able to get a bunch of capital for Justin Simmons, who just played arguably the best season a safety, genuinely the best safety season a safety played this year, I think you should do it.
Interesting. Okay. One thing I don't know if I agree with you on the Justin Simmons take, but one thing I will say that I do agree with what you said is that probably his stock will never be higher. He's coming off a year where he missed a few games and had as many turnovers as he did. He was phenomenal this year. And can I bank on that every single year? Probably not. Like, it was probably a great year. And you'll probably get really great play from Justin Simmons in the future. But this is probably somewhere looking at like one of his better years.
In his prime,
I mean,
Walter Payton Man of the
you
Year.
can make the case that this has been the best year of his career in a shorter time. So I understand where you're coming from on that. Boggin says, no offense, I hope you stub 2 toes on your way to collect more lies. I will give Frankie that point without question. I will. It's just facts. That's just facts. That part is just facts. And if you're under the influence, like I see where Frankie's coming from. I do. Would I make the Justin Simmons trade? I probably wouldn't, because I probably wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it.
So you wouldn't take a 2023 and a 2024 first for Justin Simmons, right?
Oh, yes. If it's 2 firsts, I'm taking it.
If Bradley Chubb coming off an ACL tear and only having 6 sacks is worth a first round pick, then Justin Simmons, who's been an All-Pro and Walter Payton Man of the Year, who just had 9 turnovers. Dog, I don't
know.
The NFL be stupid sometimes.
No, I know. You can't predict these people because they're
all right. Would you do like a first and a third round pick next year? Like, where's the line? That's all. Okay. You know what? Doesn't even matter. We don't need to figure out the exact semantics. All I'm saying is there's a price, right? There's a price. No one's saying he's not tradable because there's a goddamn price. No one can tell me that if any of these teams that are playing were like, hey, shit, we'll give you 2 first. They'd be like, damn, that might be really good.
I get what you're saying, dude. I totally
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And I love Justin. If Justin sees this, I apologize. I really just want you to get your rings, dog. And I don't know if you're going to have the chance in the next couple of years in Denver. And let's be honest. Do you think Justin Simmons is I think he has next year and the year after on his contract. Do you think Justin Simmons signs another contract in 2025 to stay with the Denver Broncos at this rate?
If I were him, I wouldn't. I would be trying to go.
Fuck no. Are you kidding?
Are
you fucking kidding? Oh my god! If we have another 6-win season, I would be you would be fucking crying. They would call me. I would block the number. I would block George's number. I'd be like, "Fuck out of here! You think I'm signing a contract?"
Who wants to see me? Who wants to see me bait Frankie into another fiery team? What are your opinions on the Broncos kicker right now? And do you think that he should be on the hot seat for next year?
Easily gone. Guys, Brandon McManus, Denver can do so much better. We got rid of Sam Martin, who is set the franchise record for net gross yard. I don't remember the exact stat. Punting stats are weird. For net gross yardage on punts. He's bombing 51 yards. We cut him for Corliss Waitman. We're keeping fucking Brandon McManus because he was on a Super Bowl team 6 coaches ago. Fuck him. Fuck Brandon McManus. No, Brandon McManus seems like a fine guy, and he was a big part of the Super Bowl run. I'm not trying to roast Brandon McManus at all. But yes, Denver is currently paying a kicker $3.5 million. That's not that's pretty stupid. I'll be completely honest. For a team winning as many games as they are, it is absolutely ludicrous to be taking some of the capital you have and dedicating it towards him, especially when it seems like every year 2 or 3 kickers are coming out of college that are just really fucking good. Damn. Yeah. Cade York for the Browns this year was awesome. There's a lot of pretty good kickers that seem to come out every single year. And I mean, again, it is one of those positions that you're always happy you have it until you don't. And I'm not trying to make it sound like Brandon McManus is absolute garbage. He is just not worth the contract he is being paid. He is being paid to be one of the top kickers in the NFL. He has not been a top kicker in the NFL for probably 4 or 5 years now. He's probably been closer to average. He has not been good from long range, which I mean, I guess the only not bummer about it, but it's man, they play in fucking Denver, man. You'd think they'd want to maximize that a little bit. Maybe that sounds stupid, but they should really try to find a kicker that can make the most. That's why Matt Prater was so awesome to have in that Denver Bronco era, because he could so consistently nail these 50-yarders. Brandon McManus doesn't do that for you anymore. And it seems like kind of the entire special teams has been a mess for a little bit. And I'm not trying to put that on him, but it might just be better to kind of clean house at this point, just move on. I don't think you're going to be missing too much, if we end up missing 2-3 more kicks next year, will we end up really being that pissed at it at the end of the year if, say, they have an extra backup guard and I'm not having to watch who gives a fuck from Montana State University, who, has never played left guard before. He's blocking Chris Jones. We have $250 million quarterback standing behind him. He's praying for his fucking life, putting his hands up wherever. Swipe move right by him into the fucking ground. I'm not going to be mad that Brandon McManus isn't on the team when we have an actual player to put at left guard. I'm not going to be mad. I'm not going to be that mad.
I like it, Frankie. I mean, hey, I'm in the same boat as you. Before I do this, Bill says you were right about the Justin Simmons thing. And then I also have to say, I think Paul did as well. I think. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought he did, though. Anyways, to the McManus point, I totally agree. Like, I just think at some point, like, I get it. He is the guy that's been here since the Broncos won the Super Bowl, blah, blah, blah. The fans have a big connection to Brandon McManus. But man, like, I just don't think he is performing good enough mixed with some of the stuff that's been happening. Like, he's been in social media altercations. I remember the little altercation when we went to the presser with Fangio. That was ridiculous to me. Like, dude, you're kind of the kicker here. Like, I don't know what you're doing complaining about the coach to the presser for. I don't know. There's just certain things there like that I do think mixed with the performance this last year. Hey, like, if he's nailing everything, go and do what the hell you want, dude. I don't really care. But both of those mixed together, I'm kind of like, all right, we should at least bring somebody in, and then you can go get somebody else with that money, save some money, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of where I land. Any final thoughts though, Frank?
Yeah, I just have one more, like, just to kind of showcase, like, it's kind of weird, right? Like, I don't know why Brandon McManus, like, maybe, he gets a lot of shit when he misses stuff, but he does seem to get a lot of love from the fan base. I just want to compare it again. I'm in Wisconsin, so it's kind of a little comparable. So Mason Crosby, I believe, has been the Packers kicker for however God knows how long. Okay,
from CU.
He's really. I did not know he's from CU. That's sick.
Yeah,
I'd say kind of a comparable career to Brandon McManus, where he's this Super Bowl legend. I think he was there when they beat the Steelers. He was there for that Super Bowl. He's been there for so long. But it's so funny because the reaction to Packers fans when that guy Mason Crosby starts doing bad is like, holy shit, we should have killed this guy like 3 years ago on the field. Why is he still even breathing? And then Broncos fans, like, Brandon McManus has been like dog shit for 5 years. And people are like, okay, guys, he was on the Super Bowl 50 team, though.
I do have to say okay. The first one, it might be a little extreme. Like, the Mason Crosby haters might have gone a little too far.
It's crazy on Mason Crosby out here.
We probably shouldn't be.
I always see that.
Don't get me wrong, bro. I'm just as fiery as a fan as anybody when I'm watching the game. Like, I'm screaming, I'm pissed off the entire time. I'm the most pissed off person during any Broncos game, winning or losing ever. I hate it. Like when I'm watching the Broncos games, like, I hate everything. But is that healthy? Probably not. Like, to be honest with myself,
you gotta have something.
I wish I was just one of the other people that could just attach back to the old memories. Like, I do think that's probably more of a healthy way to go about it.
It's always funny to compare the fan bases, and always, like, and it's neither one of them is right and neither one of them is better. It's just always crazy that, like, Brandon McManus is viewed as this, like, he's like a war hero in Denver, and I want to be like, this guy was the fucking kicker. Like, I'm not trying to roast him at all, but, like,
I think you are, though.
I'm really not. Like,
maybe you're not trying, but like
it's just like, dude, we've let go so many Super Bowl heroes. We watched Von walk. We watched Chris Harris walk. We watched all the defense walk. Like, didn't give a shit about,
Chris Harris caught it the worst.
All of them just caught it. Yet Brandon McManus, the kicker, were like, well, we got to make sure we do right by Brandon McManus.
I do feel like it's true.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay. All right, Frankie. Before we say anything really flagrant, here today on the Let's Talk Broncos podcast. Where can they find your amazing work? And make sure to give the people you're at where they can on Twitter where they can send
First of all, leave likes and subscribe to this YouTube channel if you're on YouTube. Like the podcast, like everything, repost it, share it on your socials. Really helps us. We're trying to get as many views as we can. Find me at Frankie's Film. Frankie's Film, Frankies Film. I don't know why I spelled it there. Frankie's Film. I'm on TikTok, Frankie's Film NFL. I post the college film that I'd be putting on Twitter. I just put it right up back over on TikTok. No dances or anything. Maybe someday. And then I write over at Mile High Report, put out my weekly Broncos film review article. I will be doing a lot of off-season and draft content over there, putting out my stuff. You can get your words from me in written format if you don't like hearing my voice yell at you. I don't know why I slipped into a little bit of a Southern accent there. But Joey, where can they find your wonderful stuff?
Everyone, you can follow all of my work at or find it at Mile High Sports. Follow me at JR Giraffes. It's really my two big things there. I look forward, guys, to more draft content. Today we threw a little audible at the last second, and we kind of just wanted to go through the defense. I think we're going to go through the offense soon. We're just trying to establish needs. I think this is the time of year everybody's trying to get into the draft, and there's always these debates on what the needs are and how important things are. And that's what I think we're trying to establish here.
Yeah.
But anyways, guys,
I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
One last thing. The new coach, whoever it ends up being, whenever at the end of the interview process, will definitely influence this, the draft discussions and stuff a bunch. So let that happen. And then I did just want to throw in Harbaugh, Evero, Shaw, and Caldwell were already interviewed this week. And then Sean Payton, Raheem Morris, D'Amico Ryans, and Dan Quinn are being interviewed this upcoming week. So if you got a favorite, Broncos coach, let us know. Maybe we'll shoot you some discussions in the comments. And big decision coming up. Have a great week, guys.
Totally. For sure. And that'll be a ton to have fun that's a fun thing to follow, the coaching stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The debating points are kind of annoying sometimes, but it's going to be fun to follow. So until next time, guys. Yeah, right. Until next time, guys.